morning, everyone. Many of you may know who I am already, but for those of you who do not, my name is Janet. I say Udomratsak. I'm the wife to Chris, mother of two very active, wonderful boys, Henry and James, and a first grade teacher. The theme of this year for our church is Better Together, and I would like to testify how that has been in my life. I've been attending the Garden Church since 2019 and can honestly say that I finally found my home church. When we were first looking, we wanted to find a church with a children's ministry where we can have Henry go to his service and Chris and I would go worship together. And we had already heard about the Garden and decided to give it a try in January of 2019, and well, we've been here ever since. My journey with God has been a rocky one, to say. In 2019, my relationship with God was very distant. I found myself wanting to just live a life that I wanted to live. And in August of that year, I experienced a series of life-changing events that helped me to realize that I did need a community in faith. So I actually suffered a miscarriage at 18 weeks with our son, with our second child. I ended up being hospitalized for 4 days in hopes that we could do something to save him, but in the end, our little Tyler did end up going to be with the Lord. I felt God's presence throughout this entire process, but again, it felt as though he was just sitting in the background watching everything happen, and instead of walking beside me. While I was recovering at home, I started to become really depressed, and I had decided, well, it's time for me to go back to work. So I went back, but when I went back, I also started to experience tinnitus in my left ear. And for those of you who don't know, it's like a constant ringing in your ear. And for me, when it comes to anything dealing with vision or hearing, it causes me to have severe anxiety. So one night, it just got really bad in November, and I remember just having this weird feeling come upon me saying, check the church website, just check it. And so when I went on the website, I noticed that there was a button for prayer requests. And I typed in my prayer request saying, hey, I'm experiencing tinnitus and I can't sleep, I can't do this. And sure enough, the very next day, I received an email. And in that email, it invited me to come to Wednesday night prayers. And so I came, and when I came, I get super nervous when I'm in front of people. But kids, I'm totally fine. So when I came to the Wednesday night prayer, I felt this overwhelming sense of belonging, that this was the place for me to be. And when I came, that's when I knew that my journey was starting to change, and it was starting to shift. In January of 2020, I joined my first CG group with Allison and with a wonderful group of sisters, as you can see. And then in February, Chris and I took the membership class, and we became members here at the Garden. And today, I'm serving in GKM and GLC. So to say the least, this is my home church now. We hear this all the time of how God is great, and he places all these events in our lives, but for a purpose, and boy, did he really do that for me. Because as we remember, 2020 was the year that we went into the full pandemic mode. And so we were all working remotely from home and pretty much on lockdown. And so during that year, Pastor David started his daily watering online. And that helped me to actually get grounded and focused and get closer to God. And again, that's where I felt my sense of community during those 15-minute devotions that we had. They were very short, but they gave me such courage and a heart of contentment. It was just wonderful to experience. And at the end of that January, I actually found out that I was pregnant again. This time around, the pregnancy was just completely different. It felt different. I had my CG sisters praying with me. I felt just the love of the community lifting me up and supporting me with their prayers. And little did I know that all of this was in preparation for what was to come with this pregnancy. That 4th of July, I went to the hospital again, thinking that it was going to be a short visit, but it ended up being me being admitted indefinitely, and that was at 24 weeks of complications with my pregnancy. I was admitted for 71 days during the pandemic. which meant I was not allowed to have any contact with my family or any visitors, to say the least. And even though I was alone, I had this overwhelming sense of peace that came over me. And I have to say, it really was the love that I was receiving from my CG group. And honestly, I have to say thank you for Wi-Fi, because if it wasn't for that, my stay would have been really tough. Because every morning I woke up to Pastor David's, daily watering, and that really helped me make it through the day. And I sound like a PSA for CG groups, but if it really weren't for those ladies, I don't know how I would have made it through those 71 days alone. They actually set up a prayer text chain every day, and they sent me care packages. And as you can see, they sent me care packages and food and just things to keep me busy during my stay while I was there. These prayers really worked, because as I was there, James was growing and things were going great and things were looking better for me as well. The questions that I really received a lot of about my stay in the hospital was, how did I do it? How did I get through it? And, honestly, it really was the support of the community here at church and everybody lifting me up in their prayers. And it was just really great to have that. As you know, the year 2020 was the year that our school year went virtual. And so I told myself, what's the difference of teaching at home and teaching from my hospital bed? So I went through hoops and hurdles to get clearance from my school district, from the hospital, and I got the clearance, and I started teaching that year from my hospital bed. Hospital rooms are not very pretty, so I had Chris running around, going to Michael's, going to Lakeshore, everywhere, picking up my Amazon orders and dropping it off to the hospital for me to help me transform my room into a classroom. As you know, the pandemic brought a lot of negativity and just sadness in this world, and the hospital got wind of me teaching from my room, and they thought, this was an excellent way to spread that positivity. There you go. Spread that positivity and hope to those that were there. And, they set up an interview with the Daily News, which started it all, and after that, I went viral on social media. I had interview after interview, but, honestly, I didn't really think anything of it. I was just telling myself, hey, the pandemic is scary, and these kids are starting a new year off, at home, doing something new. It's virtual. It's new for everyone, and I just wanted to show them that I was there with them. But I didn't know that I was going to get all this attention from just that one post that went out. But, I went on local news stations. I was on news stations across the country. I made it to different, countries as well. But the highlight for me really was going on the Kelly Clarkson show. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm a huge fan. So the year before, I was at one of her tapings, and then the next year, I was on her show. But, throughout this whole experience, I taught all the way up until a few days before I delivered. And, James was delivered at 34 weeks. We had to deliver him early. But, he was born perfect and healthy. But that wasn't the only miracle that we went through that day. I actually suffered internal bleeding throughout the delivery process, and the doctors honestly did not think that I was going to make it out. But I did. I'm here today. I honestly feel that if I didn't have my garden family praying with me and supporting me and being there with me, I wouldn't be here today, nor would James be here today with us as well. Miraculously, he stayed in NICU for only 3 weeks instead of the 6 that they said that he would be in there for, and I recovered so quickly that it surprised the entire hospital staff. I'm here as living proof that having a community is what God intended for us to have. And I'm so grateful for the sisters and community that I have here at the garden. And we truly are better together. Thank you.